Have you ever met someone whose touch did not hurt, but healed something you forgot, was even broken? He was a powerful CEO, cold, distant, allergic to touch. Literally, she was his assistant, ordinary, kind, quiet, but somehow, her presence did not make him flinch. It made him feel. What would you do if the person who fears closeness starts falling for you, but runs away the moment it feels real? Would you stay? Would you wait? Or would you walk away to protect your own heart? This is not just a love story. It is a story about returning, about learning to stay, even when it is hard. So if you have ever loved someone who pushed you away, stay with us. And if this story touches something inside you, comment 1 below. But if you think this video could be better, comment 2 to help us grow. The air in Graham Carter's office was always cold. Not because of the temperature, but because of the silence. It was the kind of silence that made people nervous. The kind that wrapped around your spine and made you forget how to breathe. Graham sat behind his massive oak desk, his eyes focused on a screen that never seemed to rest. His hands never fidgeted. His voice never rose. He was composed, efficient, distant. People at Carter Technologies called him the Iceman. They did not say it to his face. No one ever did. But they whispered it in the elevators, in the restrooms, behind closed doors, after meetings. Because Graham Carter was not just a man, he was a presence. He walked into a room and the chatter died down. He passed by and conversations paused mid-sentence. His shoes never squeaked. His suit was always perfect. His expression, unreadable. Some said he was born like that. Others believed something had broken in him a long time ago. No one asked. And Graham never offered answers. He liked it that way. On the 35th floor of a glass building in downtown Chicago, he had built an empire. Lines of code, machines, and quiet routines. No mess, no surprises, no complications. His personal life mirrored his professional one. Empty, predictable, safe. Every morning at exactly 6:45, Graham entered his office. The blinds rolled up automatically. The coffee machine buzzed once. Strong, black, no sugar, no cream. His assistant left it on his desk before 6:50. She never stayed longer than needed. She knew the rules. Do not touch anything on his desk. Do not speak unless spoken to. And above all, do not touch him. Because Graham Carter had an unusual condition. He could not stand physical contact. It was not a joke. It was not a preference. Every time someone touched his skin, he felt a sharp sting, like static, but deeper, as if his body rejected warmth, as if affection burned. A handshake made him nauseous. A pat on the back made his vision blur. It was not fatal, but it felt unbearable. Doctors had no answers. Psychologists gave theories. Childhood trauma, sensory response, protective defense mechanism. Graham did not care. He had learned to live with it. He did not need anyone. At least, that was what he kept telling himself, until one Tuesday morning in early fall. Outside, Chicago was wrapped in gray. The city buzzed under clouds that never opened. The sidewalks were wet from the night rain. Graham was reviewing a financial report. His coffee had gone cold. He pressed the intercom. There was a pause. Then a soft voice replied, "Coming right in." He looked up for a moment, not recognizing the voice. A few seconds later, the door opened. She walked in. Not hurried. Not timid either. Her eyes searched the room with curiosity, not fear. She was holding a file and a steaming cup. "Morning, Mr. Carter. I brought the updated documents and a fresh cup. I thought you might need it." He blinked. This was not his regular assistant. She stepped forward, set the file on the table, reached for the old coffee cup. And as she did, her hand brushed against the back of his, just for a moment, a single touch. But it stopped time. Graham froze, his body locked, his breath halted. It felt like nothing. No sting, no heat, no pain. He looked at his hand, then at hers. She had already stepped back, unaware, smiling faintly. Her brown hair was pulled back in a low bun, her blouse tucked neatly into her skirt. She looked normal, but something was not. He stood up. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice deeper than usual. She tilted her head. "Madeline. Madeline Blake." "Where is Jennifer?" "The agency said she is on leave. They sent me over as a temp." "I see." He looked at her, hard, and she smiled again. "You all right, Mr. Carter?" "You look like you saw a ghost." He said nothing, because he had no words, and that was the most terrifying part. Madeline Blake did not fit the city. Not really. She had grown up in a quiet town near Savannah, where neighbors waved from porches and people called each other by name. The sky was big there. The air smelled of honeysuckle and cut grass. Chicago was different. It moved fast. It never waited. It roared. But Madeline had learned to adapt. Life taught her that early. Her mother passed when she was 19. Her father, long gone before that. She paid her way through college by working 2 jobs and watching other people's dogs on weekends. She never asked for more than she needed. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to stand. And yet, when the agency called with a last-minute placement at Carter Technologies, she almost said no. Big corporations made her nervous, but bills were bills, and she had learned not to overthink when the rent was due. That Tuesday morning, she walked into the 35th floor, wearing her only ironed blouse and her quietest shoes. The hallway smelled like lavender and printer ink. It was too clean. She had seen Graham Carter on television once, some interview about innovation and leadership. He spoke clearly, but without warmth. His eyes never moved. They called him a genius. They also called him cold. She never thought she would meet him, and certainly never thought she would touch him. But that was exactly what happened. A simple mistake. She reached for the old cup, too fast. Her hand grazed his, and just like that, the air shifted. He did not flinch. He did not move away. For a heartbeat, he looked like a man waking up from a long sleep. Madeline stepped back quickly. She hated making people uncomfortable. But instead of anger, he only asked for her name. That was strange. And the look in his eyes, stranger still. She had dealt with difficult bosses before. People who barked orders and forgot to say thank you. She knew how to stay invisible when needed. But Graham Carter was not loud. He was quiet in a way that made noise feel disrespectful. So when she left his office, she walked slower, more carefully. She did not understand what had just happened, but something told her not to ignore it. Back at her temporary desk, she glanced through the office window. She could see him sitting still, unmoving, like a statue in a snow globe. Only his eyes. They were not still. They were looking at his hand. That night, Madeline sat in her small apartment near Wabash Avenue. The radiator clanged every few hours. Her cat, Mabel, curled next to her feet. She replayed the moment in her mind. She had touched his hand. It was brief, barely more than a whisper. But he looked at her like it meant something, like it mattered. She shook her head. "Get it together, Maddie. You spilled coffee once, and now you think you broke a curse." She smiled at herself, but the smile did not last long, because deep down, something about that man stayed with her. Not just the way he looked, but the way he held himself. As if the world was heavy, and he was used to carrying it alone. She knew that posture. She had worn it too. The next morning, she arrived 15 minutes early. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed her badge code. In the lobby. She nodded politely to the receptionist. No one else made eye contact. The elevator chimed softly. As she stepped out, she saw him already at his desk, as expected. He glanced at her, no greeting, but no frown either. She walked over, quiet as before. Morning, Mr. Carter, I have your schedule and a fresh cup. Medium roast today. Hope that is all right. He took the cup, did not sip, just held it. Sit, he said. She blinked. Excuse me. He pointed to the chair across from his desk. She sat, unsure. He stared at her for a moment. You touched me yesterday, he said. Her stomach sank. She nodded. Yes. Sorry. It was an accident. You do not need to apologize. But it was unusual. Unusual. He placed the cup down slowly. I do not allow physical contact. She waited, unsure if she was supposed to say something, and yet, he continued, I felt nothing unpleasant. She frowned gently. That is, good, he did not respond, only watched her face like it held an answer he had not studied before. Then, out of nowhere, I want you to continue. She raised an eyebrow. Continue working here. No, he said. Continue being near me. Madeline did not understand what he meant. Continue being near me. It sounded clinical, cold, but not cruel. She sat in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap. I am not sure I follow, she said. Graham leaned back slightly. The light from the window cast sharp lines across his face. I need to understand what happened yesterday. You mean the touch? Yes. She hesitated. Maybe it was nothing. Nothing. He repeated. No discomfort. No reaction. That is, not nothing. Madeline looked down. I do not know what to tell you. Mr. Carter, I did not do anything special. I was just handing you a cup. He was quiet. Too quiet. Then he stood. I would like to offer you a temporary position. Full-time, as my assistant. Not through the agency. Her eyes widened. That is, sudden. You will be paid double your current rate. That is even more sudden. He blinked. Does that mean no? She looked at him carefully, studying his face, his posture, his strange mix of intensity and stillness. I am not saying no, but if you want me to take the job, I need one thing. He raised an eyebrow, which is, I want to be treated like a person, not a case study, not an experiment. Graham paused, then nodded. Fair. The following days were strange, not in a bad way, but different. Madeline was used to being invisible. She made herself small in rooms. She knew how to disappear when people got tense, but Graham never raised his voice. He never slammed doors or sighed loudly. He just watched, listened, calculated, and he kept his word. He asked her to walk with him between meetings, join private calls, sit in during strategy sessions. She brought him coffee, not because he asked, but because it gave her an excuse to start the day with something warm. Sometimes, their fingers brushed when she handed him a pen. Sometimes, he did not move away. She noticed that he blinked more when she was close, that his voice lowered, that he stood slightly nearer than he did with others. Still, he never smiled. Not once. But there were moments, tiny, quiet moments, like the way he paused when she laughed, or how he glanced toward her office window when he thought no one noticed. On Thursday afternoon, a tech glitch shut down the main server. Panic spread through the floor like spilled water. People rushed, phones rang, screens froze. Madeline stayed calm. She walked into his office and said softly, "They need you." He stood up and followed her. Together, they entered the chaos. Graham did not raise his voice. He walked to each department, asked one question, gave one instruction, then moved on. Within an hour, the system rebooted. People exhaled. Madeline watched from the corner. He looked different then. Still cold, still distant, but in control, focused. People did not follow him out of fear. They followed him because he held things steady. When they returned to his office, he sat down slowly. "You handled that well," he said. She smiled. "You too." He looked at her. "Most people panic when I ask for silence. I grew up in a house where silence meant safety." He studied her face. "You are not easily shaken. Neither are you." He nodded. Something passed between them then. Not attraction. Not yet. But recognition. Two people who had learned to survive by being still. That night, Madeline wrote in her old notebook, the one she kept since college. She only wrote when something stirred her. He is not mean. He is not angry. He is just guarded. Like someone who put up walls so high. He forgot there was a sky above them. She closed the book, then reached for her phone. There was a message from her friend back in Georgia. "How is the big city? Meet any cold CEOs yet?" She stared at the screen, then replied, "Actually, yes." The sun dipped low outside the tall glass windows. The city had turned amber. Cars crawled along wet streets. Office lights flickered on one by one, like stars unsure if the night had really begun. Inside the building, most employees had gone home, but not Graham, and not Madeline. She sat quietly at her desk, reviewing his next day's schedule. The building was hushed. Only the low hum of the heating system broke the stillness. At 6:48, her phone buzzed. One message. From Graham. "Come to the corner office." She rose, unsure. The last time he messaged her directly, it was to approve travel expenses. Nothing ever felt casual with him. She knocked softly before entering. He sat in the dark. No desk lamp, no screens on. Only the fading city light washed over his face. She paused at the door. "You wanted to see me?" He gestured toward the chair. She sat, then waited. He said nothing for a long while. She let the silence breathe. Finally, he spoke. "I have not told you much about myself." She nodded. "That is true." He looked out the window. "When I was 7, my mother left me on the steps of a shelter." Madeline blinked. She did not speak. She told the receptionist she would be back in an hour, but she never came back. His voice stayed steady, but something in the way he held his jaw said more than the words did. "I waited for 3 days before I stopped believing she would return," Madeline whispered. "I am sorry." He nodded. "Slow. I stayed in the system for 11 years. Bounced between group homes, foster care, some kind, some not." He paused. "There was one place that used to duct tape the bedsheets to our mattresses so we would not get up at night." Madeline winced. Graham's eyes stayed on the skyline. People do not like to talk about those places. They make others uncomfortable, but they exist. She leaned forward, gently. "Did you ever talk to someone about it?" He looked at her. "No, because it would not change the past. And I had no use for sympathy." Madeline swallowed. "But sometimes saying it out loud helps carry it." He turned back to the window. "I stopped believing in comfort a long time ago." especially the kind that comes from people. Another pause. Then, softer. When people touched me, I felt like I was disappearing, like the skin between us was not enough, like I would be absorbed, broken. Madeline looked at him, saw something crack, even if only a little. But when I felt your hand, he continued, it was quiet. She breathed out. I did not know silence could feel warm. They sat for a long time without speaking, just two people in the same space, sharing something heavier than words. Finally, Madeline said, do you remember what color the sky was that day? He blinked. What? The day she left? He frowned, then thought, gray. He said, but not stormy, just tired. She nodded. I was 8 when my father left, she said. Graham turned to face her. He left a note on the fridge. Told my mother he needed something bigger. She said that meant someone younger. His eyes did not move. My mom worked 3 jobs after that. I grew up in a rented trailer with bad pipes and a weak lock, but we had music and candles when the power went out. She made it work. Madeline smiled faintly. Then one day, she just stopped breathing. Heart failure, no warning, no drama. Graham's voice was low. That is how people leave. Quiet, fast, like a closing door. They sat in stillness again. This time, the silence felt earned. Finally, Graham stood. I do not want this conversation to be a one-time thing. Madeline looked up. I do not want to talk every day, he added. But I want you to know, you can ask, if you ever wonder, about anything. She nodded slowly. All right. And I may not always answer right away, but I will not lie. Then I will not either. He walked to the door and held it open. She rose. As she passed by, her shoulder brushed his. He did not flinch. Later that night, Madeline walked home. The air was crisp, her coat hugged close. Streetlights flickered above puddles. She remembered his words. I felt like I was disappearing. And she thought, maybe the bravest thing anyone can do is let someone see the scar beneath the skin. The invitation arrived on Monday. Heavy envelope, gold edges, clean font. Graham read it once, then slid it toward her across the desk. Madeline looked at it. Her fingers hesitated. Annual Gala for Innovation in Technology, hosted by Westwood Ventures. Saturday, 7 p.m., Lincoln Ballroom, Chicago Art Institute, black tie required. She looked up. You plan to go? Yes, he said. It is expected. She nodded. I will arrange your tux. You will attend with me. There was silence. Then her brows lifted. As your guest. Yes. I am not part of your executive board. No, he said. But I want you there. Saturday night. The ballroom shimmered. Lights glowed from glass chandeliers. Music from a string quartet floated through the air. Everything smelled like perfume and polished wood. Madeline stood beside him in a navy dress. Simple, quietly beautiful, her hair in soft waves. Graham looked as if he had stepped from a magazine. Sharp tucks, polished shoes, calm face. But his fingers tapped once against his palm, nervous. He never showed it. But she noticed. You all right? She whispered. Yes, he said. Just stay close. She nodded. Then a voice broke through the room. Well, there you are. A tall woman approached. Red silk gown. Confident walk. A smile that cut. Madeline noticed how Graham tensed. The woman stopped in front of them. Graham, I did not think you would show. He gave a polite nod. Clara. Madeline felt the name settle. Clara Westwood, founder of Westwood Ventures. And from the look in her eyes, someone from his past. Clara turned to Madeline. And you are Madeline Blake, she said calmly. His assistant, Graham added. Clara extended a hand, her nails perfect, her rings quiet but expensive. Madeline shook it. Clara smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Well, she said, you clean up nicely. She was looking at Graham when she said it. Dinner was served at long white tables. Clara sat to Graham's right. Madeline sat to his left. Clara spoke often, loud enough for others to hear. She dropped names, shared stories, laughed at things no one else found funny. Graham responded with nods, short replies, nothing more. Madeline stayed quiet. She watched instead. She noticed how Clara leaned in too close, how her laugh came with a touch on the wrist, how she said remember too many times. Madeline felt something tighten in her chest, not quite jealousy, but something colder, something clearer. She saw something in the eyes of Clara. It was not love. It was claim. After dessert, Clara walked to the stage. A spotlight followed her. She thanked sponsors, praised innovators, praised herself. Then her eyes found Graham, and one more name. She said, voice smooth, Graham Carter. People turned toward their table. Clara smiled. The quiet mind behind some of our best technology. The man who once told me emotions slow down logic. And yet, here he is, with a lovely assistant by his side. Polite laughter from the crowd. Madeline felt heat rise in her face. Graham stayed still. He did not blink. He did not clap. Clara left the stage with applause, but she never looked back. Later, near the exit, Graham stood beside her. His jaw was tight. I should have warned you, he said. About her. Yes. Madeline shrugged gently. You do not owe me anything. I brought you here. I can handle women like her. He looked at her, curious. I have seen that look before, Madeline added. What look? The one that says, he was mine first. He looked away. She does not know you now, Madeline said softly. He turned to her. But you do. She hesitated. I know what you have shown me, and I know what I feel when I look at you. They stood quietly for a moment. Then Graham did something small. He reached out. His hand brushed hers. Only a second, but it was enough. Back home, Madeline stood by her window. The city lights blurred behind rain. She thought about the night, about Clara, about the table, about the space between three people. And this thought came. There was a third chair, but only two people sat in it. The Monday after the gala came with rain, heavy, steady, endless. Chicago streets turned to rivers. Car lights blurred behind water. Pedestrians moved like shadows under black umbrellas. Madeline arrived early. Graham was already at his desk. He had not spoken much since the gala. Not about Clara, not about anything. But something had changed. She noticed it in the way he looked at her. Not longer, not softer, just more present, as if he was no longer watching through glass. Morning, she said. Morning, he replied. No tension, no chill, but not warmth either. They worked quietly. Hours passed like clouds. Just after lunch, the building alarm rang, a drill, routine, but loud. Employees exited in groups, calm, disinterested. Madeline walked down the stairwell beside Graham. They said nothing, only the echo of shoes on concrete. Outside, the rain continued. People stood under the awning, waiting. Madeline shivered. Her coat was thin. Without a word, Graham took off his jacket and handed it to her. She hesitated. It is fine, he said. She took it. It was warm. It smelled like cedar and winter air. When she looked up, he was watching her. Not politely, not casually, but intently. as if trying to memorize something. Later, back inside, she stood in the break room, making coffee. He stepped in. His hair was still damp, the collar of his shirt slightly wilted. "Are you warm now?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes. Thank you. I do not usually offer things like that." She smiled. I noticed. A beat. Then he said, "I am trying." She looked at him. "You do not have to try so hard. Being human is not a test, but I have failed it before." Madeline placed her mug down. "What happened between you and Clara?" He leaned against the counter. "We met in New York. I was 28. She was bold, smart. I admired her. And I thought it would help me to be with someone who understood power." She waited. "But power without empathy is just control," he said. "She did not hurt you." "No, but she did not see me. Only the version of me that fit her world." "And what did you see in her?" "An escape. A shortcut to something I did not know how to build." Madeline nodded slowly. "Do you think people can change?" "I think people can choose." He looked at her then. "But change takes more than time. It takes courage." That evening, Madeline stayed late. Rain still fell. The sky was the same color as wet cement. She walked into his office with a folder. I updated the board projections. He reached out to take it. Their fingers touched. This time, his hand stayed still. Then, slowly, his thumb moved, just slightly, across her knuckle. She froze, but she did not pull away. Neither did he. Something shifted. Not loud, not fast, but real. A breath passed between them. Then he said, "Sit with me." She sat in the chair across from him. He leaned back. "Tell me what you are afraid of," he said. She looked down. "Losing people. Again. Is that why you never ask for more than you need?" She nodded. "And you?" she asked. He looked out the window, letting someone close. "And finding out I am not enough," Madeline whispered. "You are." He turned to her. "I am not who you think I am. Maybe not," she said. "But you are becoming someone better. That matters more." A long silence. Then he said, "I used to think strength was silence." She replied, "Sometimes silence is survival, but healing needs a voice." He nodded. "I want to try. Then start here." He stood, walked to the window. The city was a blur of red and gold lights. He placed his hand flat against the glass. "I hated that night," he said. She knew which one he meant. The gala, no. The shelter. That first night she left me. I remember the smell. The cold bread. The lights never turned off. I told myself to forget. Madeline walked over. She stood beside him. Quiet. Close. He did not move away. She reached for his hand. He let her take it. His fingers trembled. Just slightly. But he held on. That night, Graham wrote in his private journal, he had not opened it in years. She did not try to fix me. She just stayed. And that broke something open. The next morning came with unexpected silence. Madeline arrived at 6:50. No note on her desk. No message from Graham. Unusual. She walked to his office. The blinds were closed. The light off. She checked the internal calendar. Out of office. Personal. No meetings today. No warning. No reason. Just gone. She spent the day answering emails, updating reports, sitting still, but her mind wandered, back to the night before, to the way his thumb had moved across her hand, to the way he had said, "I want to try," to the tremble in his fingers. It had meant something. She knew it. But then, nothing. No message, no explanation, and somehow, that silence hurt more than it should. On the third day, She finally called. The line rang 4 times. Then his voice. Hello? She paused. Graham, it is me. A long breath. Madeline. Yes. You disappeared. I needed space. I understand. But you could have said that. I did not know how. Silence again. She softened her tone. Are you all right? No. But I will be. Is this because of me? No. Not you. Me. She waited. Gave him room. Then he said quietly, I felt something. Real. And that scared me. She closed her eyes. Me too. I am not ready, he added. She nodded to herself. I know. Do not wait, he said. You deserve more. She whispered, maybe I do not want more. Maybe I just want true. Another pause. Then he said, I will call you when I can. The line went dead. Days passed. Madeline worked, ate, slept. But it all felt different. As if something had cracked open, then closed too fast. She walked through downtown, streets she had passed many times before, but this time, every window reminded her of him, his favorite coffee spot, the bookstore he once said he admired, but never entered, the crosswalk where she had once handed him an umbrella, tiny things, but they carried weight now. One evening, she found herself writing. She did not plan to, but the words came. Sometimes distance is not empty. It is filled with questions. What did I miss? What did he feel? Was it too much too soon? Or too real too fast? She closed the notebook and let herself cry, just once, then stood up, washed her face, boiled water for tea. Meanwhile, across the city, Graham sat alone in his apartment, unshaven, silent. The blinds were shut, the air thick. He stared at the folder she had left, her notes, her handwriting, her warmth on paper. He had wanted to stay close, but the feeling of her hand in his, it had not hurt, and that terrified him more than pain ever could. He had built his life around being untouched, safe, distant, in control. Now, she had stepped through that wall, gently, carefully, without force, and he had pulled away, not because of her, but because he had never learned how to stay. The next morning, he wrote a letter, not a message. A real letter, on real paper. I have spent most of my life choosing safety over connection, control over chaos, silence over truth. You made me feel without demanding it. You gave without asking, and I broke something by walking away. If you still believe in second beginnings, I would like to try again. Slower, softer, but honest. Graham. He sealed the letter, wrote her name on the envelope, then paused. He did not send it. Not yet. But he placed it on his desk, facing up, ready. That night, Madeline stood by her window. The city looked brighter than usual. And quieter. Not because there was no noise, but because her heart had stopped fighting it. She whispered into the room. Sometimes, people pull away to see if you will still be there. Then she turned off the light and went to bed. 2 weeks passed. The air turned colder. Trees along Michigan Avenue lost their color. Leaves gathered at corners like forgotten stories. Madeline moved through each day with quiet routine. Wake, walk, work. She kept herself busy, not to forget, but to survive. Inside, something still waited. She had not heard from Graham. Not a call, not a note. But she never stopped checking her phone before bed. Friday evening, just after sunset. Her doorbell rang. It startled her. No one ever came unannounced. She opened the door, slowly. A delivery man stood there. Older, kind eyes, wore a navy jacket with a faded patch. Are you Miss Blake? Yes. I have something for you. He handed her an envelope. No return address, just her name. She thanked him, closed the door. Her hands shook slightly. She opened it. Inside was a letter. No typed words, only ink, his handwriting. She recognized it instantly. She sat down and read, Madeline, I once told you I do not know how to stay. That was true, but not the whole truth. The full truth is this: I never learned how to return. I walked away because I felt too much, and too fast. I feared that if I stayed, I would fail you, or worse, need you. But I was wrong. Needing someone is not weakness. It is honesty. And I miss being honest with you. If you still believe in quiet places and second chances, I will be at the park, the bench near the bridge, Saturday, 4 p.m. No pressure, no expectations, only presence. Graham. Madeline folded the letter. She did not cry. She did not smile. She simply exhaled, then walked to the kitchen, poured tea, sat with the letter beside her. The cup steamed. The window hummed with wind. She looked out at the city and whispered, He is trying. Saturday arrived. She dressed simply, wool coat, scarf, brown boots, no makeup, no jewelry, just herself. The walk to the park was quiet. Cold air kissed her cheeks. She reached the bridge and saw him, sitting alone, hands in his coat, shoulders still, eyes down. He did not see her at first. She stopped for a moment, just to look at him. He looked the same, and yet different, less guarded, less perfect, more human. She stepped forward. He looked up. For a second, he said nothing. Then he stood. Neither spoke. They just stood across from each other, one heartbeat apart. Then Madeline reached into her coat and handed him a folded piece of paper. He opened it. I came. His eyes lifted to hers. I did not know if you would, he said softly. I did not know either, she replied. A long pause. Then she added, But your letter, it sounded like you meant it. I did. She stepped closer. I never asked you to be perfect, she said. I know, he whispered. I only wanted you to stay. I am learning. She nodded. Then let us sit. They walked to the bench together. The wind moved gently across the water. Birds circled above. Children played in the distance. A violin echoed faintly from a street performer nearby. They sat side by side, not touching, just close. He spoke first. I kept your folder. She smiled faintly. I thought you might. I read your notes. Over and over. I never wrote them for show. I know. That is why they mattered. Another silence. Then he said, I want to rebuild. Slowly. From presence. Not panic. Madeline looked at the water. And start here? With me? As a friend? He nodded. I would like that. She smiled. And maybe, someday more. He turned to her. I will not rush. I will not hide, she said. And they sat there, still, open, unfinished, but no longer alone. That night, Madeline returned home. She placed the letter on her nightstand. Next to it, a note of her own. Healing is not fast, but it is real. And sometimes, it begins with a bench in the cold. The week after the park meeting was quiet, but not silent. Madeline and Graham began to exchange short messages. Nothing dramatic, nothing romantic, just presence. Morning. I hope your meeting goes well. It did. Thank you for asking. Try the cafe on Clark Street. The lemon scones are good. I did. You were right. There were no declarations, no long phone calls, but something lived between those words. Trust and time. On Friday. Graham appeared at the office, no warning. Madeline looked up as he stepped through the door. He was wearing a simple sweater. No tie, no coat. He looked approachable. "Hi," he said. She smiled. "You are here. I had to be. I wanted to see if it would feel different. And does it?" He paused. "Yes, everything does." She gestured toward the chair. He sat. His fingers were folded on his lap. His posture relaxed. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "What made you write that letter?" He took a breath. "I saw your chair. Empty. And I realized the room felt wrong." She looked down. "I thought maybe I overwhelmed you." "No," he said. "You touched something I forgot I had. A heart," he smiled. "Just a little. The first real one. Yes. That, that evening, they walked together after work. The sidewalks glistened from a light rain. They did not hold hands, but their steps matched. When they reached the crosswalk, she paused. "I used to think love had to be loud," she said. "Big, obvious. And now I think maybe the quiet kind lasts longer." He nodded. "Quiet can stay, if we let it." They reached her apartment building. She turned to face him. "Do you want to come up? Just for tea?" He looked at her, carefully. "I would like that. Inside. Everything smelled like cinnamon." Madeline moved through the space with ease. No nerves, no pretending. She poured tea. Graham looked around. Books on shelves, a wool blanket on the couch, a candle half used. He sat down slowly. She joined him. They sipped in silence. Then she said, "This is nice." He looked at her. "Comfort used to feel foreign, but this does not." She smiled. "It is supposed to be simple." He set his cup down, then looked at her hand, resting gently on the armrest between them. He reached out, touched her fingers, not by accident, not in passing, but with intention. She did not move. He slid his palm under hers, held it, firm, still, honest. A moment passed, and then another. He whispered, "It does not hurt." She whispered back, "It is not supposed to." He leaned slightly toward her, not asking, just waiting. She closed the distance. Not a kiss. Just their foreheads. Touching. Soft. Still. Staying. Later that night, Graham stood at her doorway. He looked different, lighter. "I do not know where this is going," he said. "Me neither," she replied. "But I want to find out. So do I." He reached for her hand again, held it longer, and said, "Thank you." She smiled. "For what?" "For staying long enough to let me learn how." Then he turned and walked into the night, but this time, the silence behind him did not feel like loss. It felt like peace. That same night, Madeline wrote in her journal, "Tonight, he held my hand, not like someone unsure, but like someone ready. Not ready for everything, but ready for now." And maybe that is how love begins, not with a spark, but with a hand that does not let go. Spring returned quietly. The snow melted without ceremony. The trees along the river bloomed in small, shy bursts of green. Chicago began to breathe again. So did they. Madeline and Graham now met often, sometimes at the office, sometimes in the park, sometimes in silence. It was not a romance built on grand gestures, but on small truths: shared coffee, a walk without destination, a hand held during music, in the distance. One afternoon, Madeline sat across from Graham on the rooftop of a quiet cafe. The city moved below them. Birds passed overhead. He was reading a file. She watched the light on his face. Then she asked, "Do you remember the first thing you ever felt when I touched you?" He looked up. Yes, he said. What was it? Surprise. That it did not feel like invasion. That it did not trigger pain. She nodded. And now he reached across the table, took her hand. Now it feels like safety. She smiled. And warmth. He laughed softly. That too. That evening. They cooked together. Her apartment smelled like garlic and rosemary. She wore his sweater. He wore no shoes. Music played low from a speaker near the window. He cut vegetables. She stirred the pot. Then he said, I used to believe I would die alone, and I was fine with that. She paused, but not anymore. He looked at her. No, because now I know what it means to be seen, and that changes everything. She said nothing, but she leaned in, kissed his shoulder, and he let the moment hold them both. Later, they sat on the couch. The candle flickered. She rested her head on his chest. His hand moved gently along her back. No words, just rhythm, just breath. And then he whispered, I remember. She lifted her head. What? The shelter. That first night. The bread was cold, the light too bright, but the thing I remember most was a woman's voice humming through the wall. A lullaby. Soft, broken, but steady. Madeline closed her eyes. That is what kept me breathing. She reached up, touched his cheek, and now I hear that sound. When you speak. She smiled, tears in her eyes. But my voice is not perfect. Neither was hers, he said. That is why it saved me. A week later, they visited a bookstore together. Graham found an old poetry collection. Madeline found a children's book she once loved. They paid in quiet joy. Outside, she stopped, opened the book. Inside the cover, a note from her mother. To my little one, for days when you forget you are loved. She held it out to him. He read it, then said, She gave you something I never had. She nodded. But now, I get to give it to someone else. He looked at her, and for the first time, said it. I love you. No tremble. No hesitation. Only truth. She smiled and replied, Then stay. He answered with silence. The kind that stays. That night, Graham wrote again. His journal now had many pages filled, but this entry was simple. Love is not a rescue. It is not a cure. It is a remembering of who we are, of who we could be, of what we once lost, and what we now choose to keep. And somewhere, beneath the quiet sky of a city still moving too fast, two people walked side by side, not saving each other, but seeing, not holding on from fear, but holding, still. Because sometimes, what the heart remembers is not how it broke, but how it healed. Sometimes, love does not arrive loudly. It does not always come with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes as a quiet presence, a hand that does not let go, a voice that listens, a choice to stay when leaving feels easier. This story reminds us, healing takes time, and trust is not built in a moment. It is built in silence, in the waiting, in the returning. Many of us, especially as we grow older, carry wounds. Some we hide, some we forget. But when someone comes along who sees through the silence, who does not try to fix us, but simply stays, that is when the heart remembers how to feel again. Let this story be a gentle reminder that it is never too late not to love, not to begin again, and not to let someone in. Because sometimes the most powerful kind of love is the one that learns to stay, even when it is afraid. Thank you for spending your time with this story. We hope it brought you something gentle, a memory, a thought, or simply a feeling that stayed. If this touched your heart, please like the video. Share it with someone who may need it. and subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the soul. Your presence here means more than words can say. Until next time, take care of your heart.